Hello friends, welcome back to another What's for Dinner video. If you are new here, welcome. We are back to the cold temperatures here in the Ozarks. Those warm temperatures did not last long, unfortunately. So I'm starting off today's video with a soup that I have made here on the channel, but it has been a while, so I'm going to make it again for you. This is a huge hit. This is a family favorite of ours. This is chicken gnocchi soup, and I am doing it in the crock pot. However, some of it I like to prepare ahead of time on the stove. So I'm getting some vegetables cut up to saute a little bit on the stove. And then also I'm going to cook some bacon and get that going before I throw everything together in the crock pot. So per the usual, what you're seeing is going to be a little bit different from what you see in the actual recipe, but I did not have enough chicken broth for this recipe. The recipe calls for 4 cups of chicken broth. I only had 2 cups of bone broth. So on the stove, I am making a chicken broth, and you'll see me put that into the crock pot here soon. But that is why I'm kind of doing it in an odd order compared to the recipe. But if you are a normal friend of mine, you will know that that's usually how things go on my channel. I'm also making it easier for myself, and I'm only using 1 pot. I'm not dirtying a bunch of dishes, so while the chicken is boiling on the stove and making a nice broth for our soup, I am cutting up all of the vegetables. Now the recipe calls for 2 cups of onions, celery, and carrots. However, I do a lot more than that. I probably do about 4 cups total of all 3 of those. This recipe makes quite a bit of soup, so I think you can really get away with doing that many vegetables because it really is soupier and it doesn't make it really thick or anything. I'm cutting the vegetables up kind of smaller. I like to keep the celery and carrots a little larger, but to each their own. You can cut them however you like. You can cut them into stars if you would like. It doesn't matter. However you like your vegetables, you can cut them. Sometimes people just like them a lot smaller. And I am kind of right in the middle with celery and carrots. Sometimes I like a big chunk of celery, but some people don't. So you can cut them whatever size. It really does not matter, and it doesn't really change the taste of the soup. I know a lot of people have been talking recently with grocery prices about making meals that stretch for their family. We are a family of 6, and I try to make these meals as often as possible because we also homeschool. So most of our meals, if not all of our meals, every week are at home. So I try to do a lot of meals that will stretch and that I can heat up later on for lunches or anything like that very quickly. This meal is one of those meals. It stretches. I have never froze it, but I don't think it would have any issues if you did freeze it. There's not potatoes or anything, which I know usually causes issues when you freeze things. At least it has for me in the past. But it makes a huge pot of soup. And for our family of 6, we were able to have this for dinner one night and then for many lunches throughout the week. I now have the chicken broth done, so I am pouring that into the crock pot, and I chose the worst pan probably, and so it was very, very hot. I was just trying to get all the broth in. I did put the chicken aside. I have bone-in chicken because that's usually just what I have on hand. So I put that aside, but I'm going to put it on top of the soup once I get everything put into the crock pot to finish cooking, and then later I'll take it out and debone it. What you see me pouring into the crock pot now is that bone broth that I had in the fridge from a previous recipe that I made. It was about 2 cups, so I did 2 cups of the bone broth and about 2 cups of chicken broth that I made. Now I have the same pan back on the stove, and I am cutting up slices of bacon and just putting it into the pan, and I will cook it right in this pan. And the recipe calls for 6 slices of bacon, but I think bacon is something you should really just measure with your heart. I had a very small, like 1 pound pack of bacon, and that's what I cut up and cooked. And it wasn't like overly bacon tasting. So, like I said, it was a small 1 pound pack. I'm questioning if it was even 1 pound, but it was a smaller pack of bacon, and it was honestly the perfect amount. Now that the bacon is cooked through, I am putting it in a bowl just to transfer it to the crock pot, and then I'm going to use this same pot on the stove to cook the celery, onions, and carrots in. And I'm not cooking them completely through. I'm just cooking them a little bit, not even quite to where they're tender. At this point is usually when I add the seasonings. It calls for 2 tablespoons of dried basil, 2 tablespoons of Italian seasoning, salt, and I usually like to do about a tablespoon of garlic. You can use 2 to 3 tablespoons of garlic powder, or if you want to use the minced garlic, that's fine too. You'll just have to make adjustments because some is stronger than others. Right before I take the celery and carrots and onions out of the pot, I will put in about 2 cups of fresh spinach, and measure with your heart again for this one because spinach, it wilts down so small. So this honestly, it looks like a lot more than the 2 cups. It was probably closer to 3 or 4 cups. And again, it was not too much at all. So measure with your heart on this one too. I did not put in the cans of evaporated milk at this point. You definitely should if you have those, but I was not planning on making this recipe. It was another week where I had recipes and I had most of the ingredients for a different one, but the day of, I ended up making this one, which was just slightly different. And so I did not have any evaporated milk, and I had to go and get that later on. So I did not add that. I did not add that, excuse me, at the beginning, but I do add that towards the end. You just won't see it. And then, like I said, I put the chicken on top of the soup once I got all the ingredients into the crock pot and let it continue to cook. And then once it was fully cooked through, I took the chicken out and deboned it and then put it back in. I believe I've also made this like crusty yeast bread. I'm not even sure what it's called, but pretty sure I have made it on my channel. But again, I think it's been a while. I will put all of today's recipes in the description box below so you can find the recipe for the bread and for the soup, everything from today down in the description box. But this is the perfect bread to have with a soup like this. It was wonderful. My kids love to eat it with some butter and some jam. It makes the perfect winter night meal. This one takes so much less effort than the last one. The last one, don't get me wrong, it's a crockpot meal, but it has a little bit more effort than your traditional crockpot meal, but it is well worth it. It is such a great soup. I am now making chicken fajitas, and I'm just doing sheet pan chicken fajitas, and I don't make these often enough. And we as collectively as a family decided that when I made these a couple nights ago. They were such a big hit. And the peppers, my family is not a big pepper family. We do not really like green peppers pretty much ever. There's a couple dishes that we are okay with them cooked in, but as far as bell peppers go, we are not huge fans. The ones that I can get away the most with are these yellow and red ones, and then the orange ones too. So I am dicing the peppers, and I did a red onion. I did half a red onion and half a white onion. That's just what I had at the time. And so that's what I did. And they were so, so good. Everybody completely devoured this meal. And even my daughter, who is not a pepper fan at all, she was like, she's sitting there at the table and she's like, this is something you need to make so much more often. And it was so simple. So I was very, very happy with this meal. And it was really easy. Once you cut up all of the peppers and onions, I put them in a sheet pan. And then I decided that might not be big enough. So I cut up some boneless, skinless chicken breast just into small cubes. But I was a little worried that they would take a little longer to cook than the peppers and onions. So I put them in this baking dish, and I put just a mixture of seasoning. And again, you can measure with your heart on this. I did a lot of chili powder. It was more than I was expecting it to be. I did cumin, salt, pepper, garlic, and I think just a little dash of onion powder. I also added a drizzle of olive oil, and then I mixed it all up, and I put that in the oven just for a little bit, probably about 15 minutes, for the chicken to cook a little more before I added the peppers and onions. I wanted them to still somewhat have like a tiny crunch to them, be a little tender. So I put the chicken in first, and then I added the peppers and onions and mixed those in and cooked those. This was one of those really busy days that we had. We had places to go. It just seemed like nonstop. And so I did not want to cook really any sides or really do much cooking at all this day. So it was a very good, easy meal, something that I could just cut up and throw right into the oven. And as far as sides, I did not have any rice or anything like that. So what I ended up doing was just kind of taking some fresh vegetables from the fridge. I made a really easy cucumber and tomato salad. And then I took this dip that I had made the night before. This was a green enchilada dip, and I will actually have this video of me making this at the end of this video. But I had made this for the Super Bowl, and this is the day after the Super Bowl. So it worked perfectly, and people actually liked eating this dip with their fajitas. So it worked out, but I just served some of the dip with fajitas, a couple tortilla chips, and then the cucumber salad. And it wasn't something that I had to go and make all over again or anything like that. I think that's so important on these really busy days when you have kids and you have a bunch of school activities or anything like that. It can be so easy to get overwhelmed at things, and just having ready to go stuff is really important sometimes, which is why I really stress these easy weeknight family meals on my channel, because that is the current stage of life that I'm in. So these easy meals are perfect for those days. And reusing leftover dips or repurposing meals and leftovers is such an excellent thing to do when you need a quick meal or a quick side. I am now making that cucumber tomato salad, is what I call it in my house. I tend to make it a lot in the summertime, and I use the stuff from my garden, but I have a lot on hand, and this was right before we were going to get groceries. So I want to use these things before I go and fill our fridge up with more groceries. And while I'm cutting up vegetables, I went ahead and I cut up some radishes and some couple odds and ends that I had still in my fridge. And if you can see the bowl off to the far right, I keep vegetables that I've cut up in there, just kind of random ones. There's peppers, there's celery, there's radishes, there's tomatoes, just kind of a little mixture of things. And I will put that bowl out with some dip, and my family will usually snack on that before dinner or when they're wanting a snack, and it's already cut up and available for them. For the cucumber salad, I just cut up a large cucumber. I always do very thin slices because I don't know, for some reason, and I like cucumbers in various ways, but in this salad, I feel like they really do need to be thin slices. And then I diced up 2 tomatoes. You can also use cherry tomatoes and just like half them or quarter them. Put those in. You need about a cup to that 1 large cucumber. And then you'll do a dollop of, I used mayo, but you can use Greek yogurt, you can use sour cream, and then a sprinkle of salt and about a tablespoon maybe of milk. Again, sometimes the milk is not necessary. I don't think I added it here because I diced up like whole tomatoes instead of using the grape tomatoes, but you can add the milk or not. It's really just a small amount, but sometimes it makes that difference to make it like a more creamy consistency. It is a very simple recipe, but I swear it is a big impact. This is such a great recipe to make when you're in a pinch, and my family loves this salad. I'm pulling the chicken out of the oven. It is not completely cooked through, but I'm going to add the peppers and onions at this point. I'll mix them all in. And my husband came home and brought a bunch of spices with him that he had gotten from somewhere. You can't see the label on this one right now, but I believe it's just like a Cajun seasoning. And I ended up adding some of that to it, mixed it all in, and cooked it until the chicken was cooked through and the vegetables were tender. And then I served it with a large plate of white corn tortillas. It was the perfect quick weeknight meal. I am moving on to our next meal. This is a Salisbury steak, mashed potatoes, and green beans. I grew up thinking I hated Salisbury steak. This is another one of those meals. If you are a normal friend, you will know that I recently became obsessed with pot roast after thinking that I hated it for almost my entire life. This is one of those meals. However, I have been making this particular recipe for probably like 5 years now. But I think when I was a kid, I had one of those packs from like the freezer section of the store of the Salisbury steaks, and I had that and I was horrified. It was so bad, and I'm like, well, if this is what those are, I do not like those. So I refused to eat Salisbury steaks until I was about 30, and then at that point I'm like, oh, you know what, this actually is not bad. So I have been making them ever since, and this is a dinner that I have not made for a while, and I know I have not shared on my channel, but it is really good. And my oldest son, he's 15, and he's like, you need to make this more. Why don't you make it hardly any anymore? And I think the reason is my daughter. She is not a fan of like meatballs. She's not a fan of really like meat patties. I don't know how to explain that, but she's a texture person, and she does not love the texture of this meal. So she actually only ate the mashed potatoes, and she ate I think some of the chicken fajitas, or I don't know, she had leftovers. But we all enjoyed this meal, and he is so right that I need to start making it a lot more often because it's very simple. It doesn't have a ton of ingredients, and it is really delicious and a perfect winter meal when you want to warm up. So again, I will have the recipe in the description box below, but I started off with making like the meat patties. I put 2 pounds of ground beef in a bowl. I seasoned it with salt, pepper, garlic, um, pretty heavy on the garlic, and then an egg. And I had bread that was starting to get older, so I just crumpled up some of that to make breadcrumbs. I mixed that all together, and then I divided it equally and made it into 8 patties that I then put on the stove to brown. You won't cook through. You'll just brown them on the stove. And in that skillet, I also have onions that I cut pretty thick slices and put those to brown in. And then while those are cooking, you will, in like a casserole dish, you'll mix up 2 packets of brown gravy, or if you make your own, you can do that too. You want it to be really liquidy because it will thicken up while it's in the oven. But once you have that combined and the burger patties are browned on each side, then you'll put that and the onions into the gravy mixture, and you'll put that in the oven to cook through and to thicken up. It creates a wonderful gravy to serve over the mashed potatoes. I did not show myself making the mashed potatoes, but you can make them however you want. I just diced up potatoes and made them. I didn't put anything special in them. Some salt, pepper, and butter, some milk, mash them up. You can do the instant ones if you'd like, really whatever you want to do. But I did that, and they are off to the side. I just didn't show it in the video. I also served some steamed green beans. My kids are not a fan of green beans if they don't have a lot of flavor. So I steamed them with a little drizzle of olive oil, some salt, pepper, garlic, and Italian seasoning. And then I mix them up and steam them, and they love them that way. I'm moving on to the Super Bowl. This was green enchilada dip, and you can serve it with crackers or chips. I did Tostito chips. So my husband is a huge sports fan, really any kind of sport. He loves football, and so I do not love it as much. I sat and watched the halftime show, but I'm more one of those people that I'm here for the snacks. So, and I love to make football food. I don't know, I think it's so fun. So, I made a bunch of snacks, and that's what we had for dinner. Well, I say that, but I did a pack of frozen meatballs. I threw that in the crock pot with a jar of pasta sauce, and they had meatball subs that they made themselves. It was a very easy meal, but it was also really fun. So I just put it out on the counter, and they all just kind of picked at it throughout the whole game, and that worked out for us. But this was the first time I had tried it, and I will be making it again. I also wonder if it would be good with the red enchilada sauce. That's usually the one that we use. But if you've tried that, let me know, because I am kind of curious. This was very good, though, with the green. I'm just curious about the red. But you will put in a large can of the green enchilada sauce into a casserole dish, and then a small can of the green diced chilies. You put that in with it and some shredded rotisserie chicken. I had baked this chicken previously and shredded it up, put it in, and a block of cream cheese you mix into it. I had trouble mixing the cream cheese, so I had mixed some of it as best as I could, and then I put it in the oven to kind of warm up some, and then I pulled it out and mixed it completely through. So that's kind of why you saw me mixing it a whole bunch. And then once I mixed it all the way through that second time, I added cheese, and I just did cheddar, shredded cheese, and whatever I had left of a bag of mozzarella shredded cheese. And then I popped that in the oven, and like I said, I served it with tortilla chips, but you could do crackers. My kids later, this is what they ate with the fajitas too. They loved the fajitas, but this kind of made it a little saucier, and my kids really liked that. So this is a really, really great dish, but I am curious if you've tried it with the red enchilada sauce, let me know, because that usually is our go-to for enchilada sauce. And then this was the rest of the spread that I did that night. If I can find the recipe for these sliders, I'm going to put it below because they were really good. My son is a huge fan of the White Castle sliders, and I don't even know if there's any down here at all, but I found this copycat version of it, and they were really easy. And it was actually so easy that before I even could tape me making them, they were like done. So it was very, very easy. And if I can find that recipe again, I'll put it in the description box below for you. But anyway, that wraps up another What's for Dinner video. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.